on both sides of the aisle to vote in favor of this balanced budget amendment. It is history in the making this week, and I thank Ms. Schmidt for your leadership and for trying to straighten out this fiscal insanity mess that we find ourselves in. And with that, I yield back.
And I thank my good friend from Florida. You know, as I said a moment ago, a balanced budget amendment will legally prevent us, tie our hands from spending more than we take in. It's the only method available to control spending in Washington. And it will lower our interest rates, which will contribute to economic growth. This balanced budget amendment is a job creator because it puts certainty back into the marketplace. It will remove legislative gimmicks, you know, the kind of accounting gimmicks that says we really cut when we really haven't, from the budgeting process, because it'll be just like what this woman's doing with her checkbook. How much in, how much is going out, are we in the black or are we in the red? Since the passage of a balanced budget amendment, or the attempt to pass a balanced budget amendment in 1995 by a bipartisan House and its subsequent failure by one vote in the Senate, the national debt has grown by $9 trillion. You know, if we had just had that courageous person in the Senate in 1995 to say yes, I dare say we wouldn't be in the position we are in today. The passage of a balanced budget amendment would be a key step to rebuild, restore, and regain the American public's trust and confidence in the United States, and not just the confidence for the Americans to have in us, but the confidence for our creditors around the world. You know, this resolution does a couple of things. It prohibits outlays for a fiscal year, except for those repayment of debt principal, from exceeding total receipts for that fiscal year, except those derived from borrowing, unless Congress, by a 3/5 roll call vote, none of this voice vote, roll call, we have to put our card in the machine and show how we vote up on the wall, authorizes a specific excess over the outlay. So if you have to overspend, 3/5 of us are going to have to agree to overspending. It requires a 3/5 roll call vote of each chamber to increase the public debt limit. Again, none of these shenanigans about a voice vote when we're all in the corners of the hallways or back home. Each and every one of us is going to have to take our voting card, put it in the machine, and Americans are going to see how we vote it right on that screen. It directs the President to submit a balanced budget to Congress annually. Wouldn't that be a breath of fresh air? It prohibits any bill to increase revenue from becoming law unless approved by a majority of each chamber by, again, a roll call vote. That means putting your card in the machine and having it displayed on the wall. It authorizes waivers of those provisions when a declaration of war is in effect or under other specified circumstances involving military conflict. So again, in case of a national emergency where we would be placed in harm's way, it allows for those provisions to occur. My fellow friends in this chamber, it is so important that we think about doing this and doing it this week, because I do not believe we can wait any longer. You know, the United States, as was said before, has spent almost $15 trillion of accumulated debt, 3.7 of new debt in just 2 years. It's an alarming figure. No wonder our bond creditors are looking at us and shaking their fingers. Our spending-driven debt crisis poses a lethal threat to our country's economic recovery, our national security and our sovereignty, and their standard of living for future generations. And, Mr. Speaker, I have a stake in these future generations, because not only do I have a wonderful daughter and a great son-in-law, but I have the two best grandsons a grandmother could ever have. And I look at them and I see such potential in their eye. And I look at them and I remember how my ancestors came from Ellis Island with nothing but pennies in their pocket, maybe even not even pennies. How my own father started with nothing and worked and worked and worked to put food on the table and give us the promise for a better future. How me, from an ordinary beginning, born and raised on a farm, could end up serving in the U.S. Congress. All of that is a fabric of the American dream. All of that is the potential that we can be and we should be. And I see it being threatened by our overspending. Mr. Speaker, about 10 days ago, I took the Staten Island ferry to Staten Island. See, you know me, I'm a runner. I was doing my 90-whatever marathon it was. And my friend, my cousin, said, let's take the ferry. And I did. And it reminded me of the critical juncture we are in our nation. On the way down in the cab, where you catch the ferries real close to the World Trade Center, my daughter lived in New York during the time of the attack on the World Trade Center. I'd just taken her to the Windows in the World for dinner just 3 weeks before those towers came crashing down. And so I said to the cab driver, would you mind driving me around? I want to see what the new building looks like. And you know, I saw the rebirth of the brick and mortar of that emblem in New York. And then I got on the boat, on the ferry. The sun was coming up. It was dancing across the water. And I saw Ellis Island, and I thought, wow, my ancestors came through there. My own grandfather with nothing came through there and ended up in Cincinnati. And then I saw the Statue of Liberty, and I thought, oh my gosh, that is the beacon of hope. That's where people from across the globe, they want to come to America because they know they have the chance to be the best person they can be. They have the choice and the chance and the opportunity to be what they want to be, to chart their own destiny. And there's so few places around the world that give them that choice. And then we landed, got to the bridge, the Verrazano Bridge, where we start the marathon. Because I was in the second wave, we started with America the Beautiful, and then we started with, then they sang New York, New York, you know, the Frank Sinatra song. Actually, it wasn't America the Beautiful, it was God Bless America, but I digress. And I started to cry, and it wasn't just soft tears. These were tears running down my face. And I cried because I realized we are at a crossroad. We could lose all of this. All of this could be lost because we're allowing ourselves to become obese with debt. Let me repeat that, obese with debt. You know, our First Lady likes to talk about obesity in America, and yes, it's a problem. But we've become obese with debt. And we have no roadmap to get out of it. The roadmap to get out of it is a balanced budget amendment. Because it says you can't spend more than you take in. You can't do it. Oh, and if you decide in this chamber to do it, we're going to see how you vote. And it's not going to just be 51% or 50 plus 1. It's going to be 3/5 of everybody in this chamber. And we're going to have to show America how we voted right there on that wall. And so if you're going to overspend, you better doggone well have a good reason to do it. Again, let me repeat what this measure does. It requires the Congress not spend more than it receives in revenues unless a supermajority, 3/5 vote and roll call vote to provide otherwise. It requires a corresponding 3/5 vote to raise that debt ceiling, again, a roll call vote. Requires the President to submit a balanced budget to this auspicious body. Requires him to do that, him or her. Requires a majority roll call vote for any proposed bill to increase taxes. So if we want to do this by increasing taxes, you got to have 3/5 to do that. It also provides for a limited exemption in times of war and serious military conflict, so it protects us in case we have a national strike against us. And it would take effect beginning the 5th fiscal year after the ratification by the states. Because, my friends, the problem is our national debt crisis. And now I'd like to turn this over to my good friend, Ms. Elmers.
Thank you to my good friend from Ohio. Thank you for holding this special order. You know, the American people are ready for solutions, as you know, and we are working so hard here in the House on coming up with those solutions. And we will be voting on a balanced budget amendment, and I'm very excited about that, as has been required by the Budget Control Act that we passed in August. I'm here now as one of those new freshmen, and it is amazing to me, and of course we all know, that for over 200 years we've functioned without the federal government having to
May I ask a question? When you do your bills, do you do what this lady's doing and balance your checkbook first? What would happen if you didn't do that?
Absolutely. You know, all of our homes, we all live by a budget. The American people, have had to redo their budgets over and over and over again. Why? Because of the economy that we're in today, because of the cost. And yet the federal government does not do this. We've been, now we're up to, what, 930 days that the Senate has not passed a budget. We passed our budget. We passed a budget in the House. The President had a budget, but his budget called for over $1 trillion more of spending that we were not taking in.
So it didn't balance, did it?
It didn't balance, and it didn't pass in the Senate. Ours did not come up for a vote. So Washington continues to function without a budget, and yet, again, our households function with a budget. Mothers and fathers are up at 3 o'clock in the morning worrying about how they're going to pay the bills this month. And yet the federal government just says, doesn't matter. We can just continue to spend money. As long as we don't have a budget, we can spend as much as we want. That is the problem. And the American people are tired of this. They're tired of us just with our open checkbook writing, having to raise the debt ceiling to take care of the bills that have already been submitted and the interest that we have to pay. The balanced budget amendment that we're talking about passing passed the House in 1995, went on to the Senate, missed passing by 1 vote. Where would we be today in our economy if that had passed back then? The federal government would have had to have been held to a vote. They would have had to have been held to a budget. We wouldn't be deciding these things. We wouldn't be having to pass continuing resolutions that the American people look to us in Washington and say, where is the leadership? How can that possibly be that that's the way they're functioning? And yet this is what we have to do to keep Washington running, because Washington does have a purpose. We have to provide for the national defense. We have to take care of our seniors. We have to take care of those individuals who cannot take care of themselves. And yet, without a budget, we have no way of deciding how much that will be. And so we continue on. This version makes it harder to raise taxes. This version is substantial. The balanced budget amendment says that in order to raise the debt ceiling, the future will have to have 3/5 majority to vote in each chamber in order to raise the debt ceiling. That will become even more difficult. These are what the American people, this is what the American people is calling for us to do. They're crying out for leadership. If we pass this balanced budget amendment in the House and it goes on to the Senate and passes there as well, it will move on to the states for ratification. This will be historic. We will now be saying to the federal government, you must adhere to a budget. As simple as that. The most basic function of any household and of any business is to have a working budget in place, and yet the federal government, in its arrogance, says, no, we do not. And so therefore, we are stuck in this situation that we, as you know, are dealing with every day, trying to figure out how we're going to pay for the things that we have, that the American people need. Under President Obama, the national debt has increased 34%. Clearly, it is time to stop. Clearly, the American people are saying to us, come up with the solutions. We're dealing every day here in Washington with trying to make it through, trying to build a foundation for the future. This balanced budget amendment will be a tool that we can use so that our children and our grandchildren will know prosperity, and we will ensure it. And it's time to get it done. Thank you so much for letting me speak on this issue.
I thank you so much for your attention in this matter, and you're absolutely right. We've got to get control of the spending and get control of it now. You know, it reminds me when you're trying to go on a diet. And so if I'm trying to go on a diet back home, believe it or not, every once in a while I have to kind of like watch what I eat. I don't sit there and have every candy bar in the world out in front of me and open them up. That only entices me to want to eat it. So if I'm going to go on a diet, I don't buy the candy. I buy an apple. I buy bananas. I buy something that's filling and good for me. But I certainly don't tempt myself with something that I know is only going to be wasted calories and put on weight. And yet, we don't do that here at the federal level. We say, well, it's okay, we'll cut spending tomorrow, but we'll spend today. If we had a balanced budget amendment, we couldn't have that attitude. We'd have to look at every single dime that's in our checking account and account for it before we built a new program. I mean, look at how many attempts there are for new programs, small and large, right here in this body. You've been here, what, 11 months? How many programs, ideas have come before you, and you've had to say, can we afford it?
Right.
But here we don't have to answer that question. We have the freedom to do it. May not be able to afford it, but we're not balancing the checkbook, so we don't know. It doesn't matter. It's okay. No, it's not. We have to force ourselves to do what's right for America, and not just here in 2011, but in 2111 and 2211 and beyond. Our protection, the only protection that we have, is with a balanced budget amendment, because it ties our hands to future spending. It forces us to balance that checkbook and do what's right for America. I will turn some time over to my good gentleman friend. Carry on, sir.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, this discussion is about the balanced budget, which is outstanding. Mr. Speaker, I sent to the desk a privilege report from the Committee on Rules for filing under the rule.
The clerk will report the title.
Report to accompany House Resolution 466, resolution providing for consideration of motions to suspend the rules.
Referred to the House calendar and ordered printed. The gentlewoman from Ohio may continue.
Thank you, and thank you for that clarification. And as we are looking at this, we know that 95%, the American public is with us on this. 95% of Americans believe that the deficit problem is what's ruining our nation, and almost 75% of those that recognize that the problem is the debt and the deficit, almost 75% say balanced budget amendment is the right tool to make the answer stop the spending. And so I'm going to turn it over to my good friend from Washington.
Well,
the
thank
state
you.
of Washington.
Yes, thank you so much to my good friend from the state of Ohio for organizing this special order this evening, focused on the balanced budget amendment, and having the Republican women come together to talk about the importance of the balanced budget amendment. We stand together tonight from all across this country as businesswomen, teachers, doctors, farmers, mothers, educators, nurses, and attorneys committed to restoring America's prosperity, committed to getting our fiscal house in order, committed to stopping wasteful spending, and committed to putting Americans back to work.
And that's why we stand together united in support of the balanced budget amendment. As a mom of 2 young children and greatly concerned about the growth of government spending and the government debt, I believe it hurts our economy today and threatens our children tomorrow. James Madison said that the trickiest question the Constitutional Convention confronted was how to oblige a government to control itself. History records not a single example of a nation that spent, borrowed, and taxed its way to prosperity. But it offers us many, many examples of nations that spent and borrowed and taxed their way to economic ruin and bankruptcy. And history is screaming this warning to us that nations that bankrupt themselves aren't around very long, because before you can provide for the common defense and promote the general welfare and secure the blessings of liberty, you have to be able to pay for it. Not long after the Constitutional Convention, Thomas Jefferson said if he could make one change to the Constitution, it would have been to limit the federal government's ability to borrow money. Ronald Reagan said there were 2 things he wished he would have accomplished while in office, and that was the line item veto and the balanced budget amendment. As has been mentioned, we came 1 vote short in 1995, and I can't help but think what a different world we would be in today, both economically and as it relates to national security, if we had that balanced budget amendment in place. 49 states already have a balanced budget amendment. 74% of Americans are demanding it. The House Republican women will join together in strong support of a constitutional amendment that will forever change the way Washington spends money. This is our time, this is our moment, and we must seize it. And thank you again for yielding me some time.
And I thank you, my good friend, for that eloquent view and argument for the balanced budget amendment, because we are at a crisis. We are at a threshold. We are at a fork in the road in our country. And if we don't get this spending under control, your children and my grandchildren, they're about the same age, are going to have a really tough time charting their own destiny. This is America. This is the place where streets are, quote, paved in gold. And it's the gold of sweat and from the Americans before us, the Americans that are here with us now, and the Americans of our future. But if we don't stop the unbridled spending in Washington, our future is not going to be able to continue to pave the way with gold. This spending has to stop. To say we'll do it tomorrow is not enough. We have to force ourselves into fiscal discipline. And that only way to do that, the only legal way to bind us, is through a constitutional amendment, because the Constitution says one legislative session can't bind a future legislative session with anything unless it is written in the Constitution. That means what? A balanced budget amendment. If we're going to control the spending, we have to have the balanced budget amendment. I think we're going to take this historic vote on Thursday or Friday. This is not a partisan vote. This is what is right for our future. This is what Americans, 3/4 of Americans get it. That woman that balanced her checkbook on this picture gets it. My family that's back home, my brothers and sister and nieces and nephews that are probably balancing their own checkbook sometime this week, they get it. The local government that I used to represent, they have to do it, they get it. The state legislature that I came from, they just balanced theirs on June 30th of this year. They get it. I think it's insane that we don't do the same thing. Mr. Speaker, this week we're going to do something that is right for America. It's not a partisan thing. It's not a bipartisan thing. It is an American thing. It is what will preserve us for the American dream, not just for our children, but their children and their children. It will promote economic security and national security. It will say to the world, we're ready to stand as a nation with a firm financial foundation. It has to happen. with the balanced budget amendment. To my good friend, do you have anything to add?
Oh, you said it well. You know, this is an issue that Americans get. They've had to be, you know, all across this country, families have been making very tough decisions. Small business owners, local governments, states have had to make very difficult decisions because they don't have the luxury that the federal government does to either continue to borrow or print money to cover everything that we want to spend money on.
You're right, because can I go back a little bit
Yes,
to the local
yes.
government that I represent? They have to ratchet back their revenue spending. They're spending because their revenues aren't what they used to be. At the state that I represent in Ohio, they've had to ratchet back on their spending because guess what they have to do? They have to balance their budget.
Yes.
They can't go in the red.
Yes.
I'll let you continue.
Well, and I don't pretend for a moment that the balanced budget amendment will solve all our problems, but I do believe that it will force Congress to start living within its means, start setting priorities, start having that debate over what is the appropriate role of the federal government. How can services be better delivered? What can we send back to the states? That's the debate that we need. That's the debate that the balanced budget amendment will force. And, you know, we came one vote short in 1997. It included Joe Biden's vote. He voted for the balanced budget amendment in the Senate because it was what the people wanted, and he felt it was important to be on the side of the people. And that's where we need to just continue to elevate this issue, make sure that Americans are calling their members of Congress, their senators, and asking for this vote on the balanced budget amendment. This is one of the most important votes that we will take during our time in Congress, and this is one that we need to make sure that we pass.
Well, I thank you, and I thank you for your time, because I know you've got a busy schedule and you've got those two adorable children that you want to throw some love to. And the best love that we can give to our children and our grandchildren is the balanced budget amendment. Ronald Reagan was right in so many ways, but he was right in 1982 when he said if we are going to resolve our overspending, it has to be through a balanced budget amendment. My good colleagues, 29 years later, we've got to hear his words and act on them. Because if we don't, 29 years from now, I'm not sure if we will be the greatest nation that we are today. And with that, I yield back. Please? Well, if I have somebody here that wants to talk about this, I think I can say a few more words about where we are with this. You know, my good friends across the aisle, they want to talk about how we create jobs. And we do need to create jobs, and our president, as I said earlier, had this stimulus bill that he thought was going to create jobs and didn't create any jobs. And then just a few months ago, he rolled out a new jobs bill of $500 billion that he thought was going to create jobs, but I just don't think that it's going to create jobs either. It's just going to add to our national debt. And the reason why he can do all of these things is because he doesn't have to do what this lady does each and every day, and that's to balance the checkbook. Americans want a checkbook that's balanced. You know, when you look at America, I would like to show another visual. I'd like to talk about what a few other people said in addition to Ronald Reagan. Ben Franklin, creditors have better memories than debtors. George Washington, as a very important source of strength and security, cherish public credit. One method of preserving it is to use it as sparingly as possible. Oh, my good friends in the House, if we'd have only utilized his words, to use it sparingly as possible. Both sides have been part of the problem. This is not a Republican or a Democrat sin. This is a sin from past Congresses. This is a sin we can rectify. Thomas Jefferson, the principle of spending money to be paid by posterity under the name of funding is but swindling futurity on a large scale. The principle of spending money to be paid by posterity under the name of funding is but swindling futurity on a large scale. He was saying you can't spend your way out of debt. You can't spend today, put the burden on your children of tomorrow, and expect a healthy economy. No nation has ever been successful in doing that. We in America will not be successful in doing that, and that's why we have to have the balanced budget amendment. My good friends in the House, this week is a very important week for America. We need to pass the balanced budget amendment, and I yield back my time.
Gentlelady yields back. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 5, 2011, the Chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Gomert, for 30 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate so much the comments of my friend from Ohio, from Washington State. Good people, good observations. It's an honor to serve with devoted people like that. Spending is at an all-time crisis. We do need a balanced budget amendment. There's no question. We have got to have a balanced budget amendment. A great senator from the state of Texas, Phil Gramm, joined forces and got a bill referred to as Gramm-Rudman through. That was supposed to force legislatively the House and Senate to only spend within the revenue coming in. But since it was legislation, since both bodies can create such legislation, then both bodies can undo such legislation. Just like both bodies can create a debt ceiling bill, as occurred late July, early August this year, both bodies can decide to do something different a few months later. That's the problem with legislation. It's why we do need a balanced budget amendment. Now, the bill that was brought through committee this year, this 112th Congress, entitled H.J. Res. 1, it passed out of committee, the Judiciary Committee. It says that the purpose is proposing a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution of the United States. Massive number of co-sponsors, and it was a good bill. It is. And all gratitude goes to Mr. Bob Goodlatte. He has been a strong proponent for advancing a balanced budget amendment for numerous Congresses for many years, and he had done a good thing with this bill. I appreciated his also including an amendment that I brought to committee that was passed in committee and is part of the joint resolution. But it's House Joint Resolution 1. It's a good bill. It's to provide for a balanced budget amendment. And in Article Section 1, it simply says, total outlays for any fiscal year shall not exceed total receipts for that fiscal year unless 3/5 of the whole number of each House of Congress shall provide by law for a specific excess of outlays over receipts by roll call. Well, you might think that would be sufficient just to say total outlays cannot exceed total receipts. But those of us who have been around Congress long enough know that's not good enough unless you add, as Mr. Goodlatte does in Section 8. Total receipts shall include all receipts of the United States government except those derived from borrowing. If Section 8's not in there, some clever member of Congress down the road, if the balanced budget amendment were made into law as an amendment to the U.S. Constitution, somebody would be clever enough to say, hey, it doesn't say you can't borrow. It just says you can't have outlays exceed total receipts. Well, receipts, if you get loans, you got money coming in, even from loans, well, that ought to be good enough. So we need Section 8 that says total receipts include all receipts except those derived from borrowing. It's a good provision to have in there because we know that this body, different parties in charge, different groups in here as members of the House and Senate have always had people that found a way, found a loophole, found a way to get around the laws, the Constitution. Good example of that, no, a great example of that is the Obamacare bill. Article 1 of the United States Constitution, Section 7, makes very clear that any bill that raises revenue, increases the amount of revenue, it has to start here in the House. It can't originate in the Senate. It has to start in the House. That's where the founders wanted bills involving taxes in any way that raised revenue at all had to start in the House. Well, over the years, people found a way around that. And we saw that with the Obamacare bill. The election of Scott Brown in the Senate made clear that they were going to have to do something different than what was originally planned in order to get the Obamacare bill passed. So they took a House bill. They knew they couldn't wait on the House to do anything. They were going to have to start it. So to get around the clear requirements of the Constitution that bills that raise revenue, as did the President's health care bill, raised taxes quite a bit actually, they said, okay, we're going to take a House bill that's already passed the House. They took one that provided a tax credit for first-time home buyers who happen to be veterans. That was the basic intent of the bill. And beginning with line 1, page 1, the Senate then deleted every word and substituted therein 2,500 pages of Obamacare. That way the Senate can say, hey, it didn't originate here in the Senate. This is a bill that originated in the House. We just struck every single word and put in the Senate bill. Well, clearly that violates the intent of the Constitution, because clearly that health care bill did not originate in the House. But that was deemed to be a loophole in the rules and in the constitutional law, and so it's been gotten away with before, and it was gotten away with on that bill. So we know games get played like that. If you don't specify that receipts do not include borrowed money, then somebody's going to figure that out and use it and probably get away with it. So it has to be in there. The rule has now been reported from the Rules Committee about the balanced budget amendment version that we're going to be taking up. And people keep referring to it as a clean balanced budget amendment. And that's the one we're going to take up, one that does not have anything else other than total outlays must not exceed total receipts. Now, in this House Joint Resolution 1, it has another provision that says total outlays for any fiscal year shall not exceed 18% of each, less 2/3 of each House of Congress shall provide for a specific increase of outlays above this amount. Goes on, Section 3, the limit on the debt of the United States held by the public shall not be increased unless 3/5 of the whole number of each House shall provide by law for such an increase by roll call vote. That means in order to increase the debt ceiling, you can't do it with one more than 50%. That also will require 3/5 to raise the debt ceiling. Section 4 is a requirement that the President transmit to the Congress a budget for the United States government that's a proposed budget that for that fiscal year total outlays do not exceed total receipts. Well, we've already seen with the Senate, seen previously, the President can just choose to ignore that. Not because it's not a matter of law. The law requires the Senate to pass a budget. They've chosen to ignore that, to violate the law. They have violated the law. Continue to refuse to follow the law. But unfortunately, it's another loophole in the law. Even though they're required to pass a budget, and the Senate's failed to do so for going on 1,000 days now, there is no enforcement mechanism of what we do to the Senate if the Senate violates the law by not submitting a budget. So we've seen games get played. The games continue. Now, in this House Joint Resolution 1, Section 5 says a bill to increase revenue, in other words, raising taxes, shall not become law unless 2/3 of the whole number of each house shall provide by law for such an increase by a roll call vote. So, in other words, a supermajority is required in the House and the Senate in order to raise taxes. Now, of course, Section 6 makes an exception for war. As it says, the Congress may waive the provisions of this article for any fiscal year in which a declaration of war is in effect. It's a war exception because we know in times of war we have to do whatever has to be done in order to provide for the common defense and to ward off those who would destroy this country that we love. So I think those are all important. But now we're going to be taking up something that is so important to the country, a balanced budget amendment. And I believed when I was elected in 2004, a balanced budget amendment is very important to become a part of the Constitution through the amendment process. And I still believe that. My beliefs have not changed. But in my over 6.5 years now here in Congress, it's become very clear to me that unless we have a constitutional cap on spending, the House and Senate will not be able to control themselves. And all one need do is look at who's paying the taxes now. We're told somewhere between 50% and 53% of all the adult Americans will pay all of the income tax. We're told over 47% of American adults not paying any income tax. When a country has close to 50% who are not paying any income tax, then you're always going to have a situation where there is a hue and cry among those who are getting money from the government and not paying money in, not to cut spending, but to raise taxes. And I feel like having a cap on spending is so important that even though I really appreciate and think a supermajority to raise taxes is a good idea, I think it'd be okay to let that go. If we have a cap on spending, the provision that would say it takes 3/5 to raise the debt ceiling, if we have a balanced budget amendment and a cap on spending, I think we can let those go. But I've become increasingly convinced that if we don't have a cap, a maximum amount of spending, and the best way we've seen, open to other ideas, but the best proposals have indicated a percentage of our gross domestic product is the best thing to take a percentage of and make that the maximum amount the government can spend. If we don't do that, I've seen repeatedly, whether the Republicans are in charge or the Democrats are in charge, we can't control spending. No better example than what's been going on lately. We have a president in the White House who has threatened that he'll veto a bill that makes cuts that he doesn't want. He's threatened to veto a bill that tries to rein in the extra $1 trillion of spending that he immediately came in and spent. I mean, good grief. It would seem that since this body, under control of Speaker Pelosi, for 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010, that we had spent more money than in history, that we could at least go before the big Wall Street bailout, in October 2008, we could at least go back to 2007 spending. That was spending that was created by the liberal Congress headed by Speaker Pelosi. Surely we could go back to 2007 before we added an extra $1 trillion, and then President Obama added $1 trillion, and then we keep adding that extra $1 trillion that we didn't spend in 2007. And actually wasn't spent till fiscal year 2009, because it was so late in 2008. We'd already passed October 1st. We're in 2009 spending. Why couldn't we go back to 2008 levels of spending before we added an extra $1 trillion? Before this president ran up spending to about $1.5 trillion more than we were bringing in receipts. It just seems so grossly ridiculous to have a president come in and increase, say we're going to have this big, over $1 trillion in added spending we've never had before, and by the way, if you dare try to cut any of this spending, I'm going to veto the bill. And so we don't cut spending. We had the biggest wave election last November since the 1930s. Over 80 new Republicans coming into the House of Representatives, having met them, gotten to know them. These are good people. These are good members of Congress. They came with the right motivation. They were elected by people who had the right motivation. They want to see this country thrive and not just survive, but really prosper and protect liberty. They were driven by those beliefs. They were driven by the same desire that I have that motivated me to run for Congress in 2004. I do not want to be a part of the generation that gave our children a lesser country than we inherited. That's why so many of us work so hard. We don't want to be that generation. This country could go on for 200 more years and still be the greatest, freest land in the history of the world, but not with the level of spending that we have embraced. So I've come to see, when you look at what's happened, with that wave election coming in, and you go back and look at our conservative Republican pledge made by wonderful people that I love serving with. We pledged to the American people. I didn't write that pledge, but I agreed to it. And it said we were going to return spending to pre-stimulus, pre-bailout levels. We promised that. We pledged that. Not only that, we said, and here's our marker, we promise you we're going to cut at least $100 billion in the first year. if you put us in office. That's our pledge. And everybody that took that pledge meant it. And then we have a wave election after that pledge, and wonderful, wonderful people came into this body with the intention of keeping the pledge. And we got to the spring of this year. Well, actually, we got to December. Speaker Pelosi still in charge. And there was more money given away by Congress in December than in any lame duck session in the history of the country. After the most conservative wave elections since the 1930s. Actually, that wasn't a conservative election back in the 30s, but this was a wave election. Powerful majority of Americans wanted restraint on spending. And with the wonderful people that were elected and sent up here, we had the biggest giveaway last December of any lame duck session in history. And then we come in still with the best of intentions in the first of this year. And we still knew, okay, well, just forget about December because we are going to keep our pledge. And then some realized, gee, we're up against an awful lot of people that don't pay any income tax, and they don't want any cuts in spending. We may not get enough in the Senate to do what we promised, so let's do a compromise. And it was the best of intentions. There was nothing ill-intended about working out a compromise with the Senate. But the way it should have worked is for this House to pass the bill that they believed was appropriate, this House to pass a bill that cut $100 billion off of spending, and then wait and demand for the Senate to pass something. Because the Senate just seems to have trouble passing anything. It's why the President is 50% right when he says this is a do-nothing Congress, because the Senate has been doing nothing. They got our bills piled up down there, led by able leadership here in the House. They're letting them pile up down there. They're not going to pass them. They don't want to create those jobs. Might look good for Republicans who are driving the agenda. So they're just going to let them die down there. Unless the American public make it very clear, you either pick up those Republican bills in the Senate and pass them, or there's a whole over 20 Democratic senators that won't be back come January 2013. Maybe that will motivate them. But in the meantime, we should have forced them to pass something, and then it would go to conference, and then a compromise would be worked out. That's how the system was intended to work. And then we could say to our constituents here from the House, where the Republicans have the majority, you see what the House passed. This is what we believe. We passed what we said we would. And if you want this to become law as we passed it in the House, you got to give us a majority in the Senate, and we'll do that. As it is, all we have is a majority in the House. This is the only place we could pass it. We had to work out a compromise in the conference committee, and that's why we got what we did. But in the meantime, you want what the House passed before the compromise, give us the Senate next year, and you'll get it. That's the way the system was designed to work. And then it allows the Senate to say, look, see all these giveaway programs that we passed here in the Senate? We had to drop some of these giveaway programs in the conference committee because, you know, these fiscally responsible Republicans in the House, they wouldn't go along with all the giveaways, so we had to cut some in conference. But if you want more and more giveaways like we're passing in the Senate, then give us back the majority in the House and you'll get more and more giveaway programs. That's the way the system's supposed to work. And then in November next year, the American voters can say either they want a majority in the House to have more giveaway programs like the Senate has passed, or they could say we want more fiscal responsibility as we found in the House by virtue of the bills they passed. The problem has been we have been negotiating with the Senate to see what we think they might pass and then shoot at the target that they say they might pass in the Senate rather than passing what we believe in the House. this summer. It is to Republicans' credit in the House, we passed a bill called Cut, Cap, and Balance. There were some issues, some concerns I had, but overall it was a good bill, and it passed. We should have demanded that the Senate pass something that would go to conference committee with our cut, cap, and balance, and we work out a compromise from there. But that's not what we did. We turned around and passed a debt ceiling increase that had been negotiated, and basically what the Senate said they might be willing to pass, and we got it passed. My point being, we keep passing bills that really haven't cut spending. And with a wave election like we had and a big group coming in, and we couldn't control spending, we couldn't get a majority to pass it in the House to cut $100 billion in spending, what are the hopes in the future? The time has come for a balanced budget amendment with a cap on spending, and I think that cap on spending is so important to help future Congresses, help this country last. I think it is so important that I think we could forget about the two-thirds to raise taxes. I think we could, forget about some of the other provisions if we just have those two things. A balanced budget requirement. Outlays do not exceed the receipts, and receipts don't include borrowed money. That's number one. And number two, a cap on spending. We've seen time and time again we haven't been able to control spending, even with the incredibly good representatives that were added last November. With regard to the debt ceiling and bringing down the spending, good grief, we added over $1 trillion, spending nearly $1.5 trillion more than we're bringing in receipts, and we can't find $100 billion to cut from that? I mean, good grief, this House this year had agreed to a 5% cut in our legislative budgets. We did that to ourselves. Most of America has no idea about that. Then for next year, we're going to have a little over a 6% cut in our legislative budget. Most of America has no idea about that either. But we did it, and the only way that's going to really make a difference in the deficit is if we make that demand of every other agency, every other department, every other amount of discretionary spending. We say, look, we did it to ourselves. That gives us the moral authority to say, you're cutting your budget 5% next year and 6% the year after that. We're going to bring this down 11% over the next 2 years, and voila, we have met the requirements that was put upon the super committee. And you see some problems with the so-called super committee. There's some great people on there. The people that were put on there from the House and the Senate, Republicans, they're friends and they're good people. And Pat Toomey's not a more conservative guy anywhere, but he was even willing, from the reports, to have a framework that actually raised revenue, like the demand had been made by the Senate and Democrats and by the President. And some of us were wincing at, ooh. But he was willing to do that, and it looked like the Democrats were so impressed, gee, this is great. So I tell you what, this may be the deal that works. And then they went back and talked to their Democratic leadership, whoever that is, and they came back and said, we can't work out a deal here. Well, that should have made it pretty clear that when the agreement was made to cut hundreds of billions of dollars from our national security and at the same time cut hundreds of billions of dollars from Medicare, that some people on the other side of the aisle have realized if we go into next year's election and the only cuts to Medicare have been the $500 billion that Obamacare did last year, the Democrats rammed through against the will of Republicans in the House and Senate and against the people across America, we're going to be toast next November. So if we could have this failure of the super committee and all this doesn't work out and all these hundreds of billions cut from Medicare, then we can tell them the Republicans did it. Instead of Obamacare that AARP thought was a good idea. They'll forget about that if we have those cuts this year because we blame the Republicans. Mr. Speaker, may I inquire how much time is left?
The Speaker has 55 seconds left.
Thank you. Then let me finish up by saying we need a cap on spending. And in respect for the veterans, let me finish with a prayer from George Washington, just a small excerpt since my time is so short. It's Washington's prayer. Almighty God, we make it our earnest prayer that Thou will keep the United States in Thy holy protection, incline the hearts of the citizens, including particularly to entertain a brotherly affection and love for one another and for their fellow citizens of the United States at large, and particularly for their brethren who have served in the field. Those are our veterans. I'm a veteran, didn't serve in combat, but thank God for those willing to make the ultimate sacrifice for our liberties. Now we should not squander it. With that, I yield back.